Russia's medical system is likely stretched to its limit as soldiers on crutches are increasingly seen on the front lines, Business Insider reports, citing British intelligence. According to the UK Ministry of Defence, there have been numerous sightings of wounded Russian troops returning to battle as the medical system is overwhelmed. An intelligence report released Sunday said it is highly likely that wounded Russian troops are being returned to combat missions in Ukraine with non-healing wounds, often on crutches. In particular, the 20th Combined Arms Army is mentioned, which, according to British intelligence, could form assault groups from wounded soldiers. There is a realistic possibility that Russian commanders are directing these activities to support personnel who would otherwise be lost in an overburdened medical system, the report said. The British Defence Ministry also cites Ukrainian estimates that 830,000 Russian soldiers were killed or wounded during the war, of whom about 400,000 require treatment outside the combat zone. The report states wounded soldiers were likely returned to their units after being prematurely discharged from forward medical stations as directed by their commanders. This practice, according to the intelligence community, reduces the burden on the overburdened military medical system and improves the unit's ability to track and utilize wounded soldiers for operational purposes. In addition, the report notes that the lack of adequate medical care in facilities located further from the front lines necessitates the transfer of administrative and medical burdens back to military units. The British assessment of the situation emerged after video footage was published on Ukrainian Telegram channels showing Russian troops on crutches in a forested area near Pokrovsk. Other videos showed wounded soldiers complaining about the conditions of their deployment. In mid-January, Ukrainian sources released drone footage showing 2 soldiers on crutches in an open field near Pokrovsk. The drone dropped ammunition on them, likely rendering them incapacitated. However, it remains unknown what injuries these soldiers sustained before the drone strike, or whether they were involved in combat or simply moving between positions. The footage has also sparked debate in Russia. Military blogger Svyatoslav Golikov harshly criticized the practice of sending wounded soldiers to the front lines in a post in January, calling it a complete disgrace. In particular, egregious cases, obvious cripples, can even be sent to storm, but more often they are sent to strengthen newly won positions, he added. Golikov suggested that the soldiers in the video were without equipment and weapons because Russian soldiers often have to find equipment on their own at the front. The backlash against the treatment of the wounded intensified after another video was released in mid-January showing a man in military uniform beating 2 wounded Russians with a baton and using a stun gun on them. Authorities in Kyiv told Russian media that they had launched an investigation into the incident. Signs of a lack of resources in the Russian military are becoming increasingly obvious as the war turns into a competition in which Kiev and Moscow try to outdo each other in troop numbers and weapons stockpiles. To bolster the ranks, the Kremlin is increasing bonuses and social benefits for new recruits, and in some regions, cash incentives for contract soldiers have almost equaled American military pay. In 2025, Russia plans to allocate almost a third of its federal budget to defense, 13.5 trillion rubles, approximately $135 billion, which is happening against the backdrop of the country's economic isolation due to Western sanctions.
U.S. President Donald Trump spoke to reporters at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland on Sunday. According to Associated Press, Trump said 6 hostages from Venezuela are now safely with their families. 6 Americans who had been detained in Venezuela in recent months were freed by the government of President Nicolas Maduro after he met Friday with a Trump administration official tasked with urging the authoritarian leader to take back deported migrants who have committed crimes in the United States. Trump said that he will retake control of the Panama Canal is driven by legitimate national security interests stemming from growing concerns about Chinese activity in the Arctic and in Latin America. Canada and Mexico ordered retaliatory tariffs on American goods in response to sweeping tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump, and businesses and consumers in both countries questioned Sunday how the new trade war might affect them. We can play the game all they want, Trump said, adding he would speak to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday morning. USAID, whose website vanished Saturday without explanation, has been one of the federal agencies most targeted by the Trump administration in an escalating crackdown on the federal government and many of its programs. It's been run by a bunch of radical lunatics. And we're getting them out, Trump said. Trump has accused Mexico, Canada and China of not doing enough to staunch the flow of fentanyl into the U.S., slapping the three countries with tariffs partly to encourage them to do more about the opioid that causes some 70,000 overdose deaths in the U.S. annually. We have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada. And they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot of worse, he said.
We had a very busy weekend. We got the 6 hostages out of Venezuela, as you probably know. And they're very safe right now. They're home with their families. Secretary of State Rubio is in Panama right now, and we're talking about the Panama Canal. What they've done is terrible. They violated the agreement. They're not allowed to violate the agreement. China's running the Panama Canal. That was not given to China. That was given to Panama foolishly. But they violated the agreement, and we're going to take it back, or something very powerful is going to happen. And I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada, and something's going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. Mexico, we've had very good talks with them, and this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada, and we're not going to allow that. USAID, run by radical lunatics, and we're getting them out, and then we'll make a decision. I'm speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow morning, and I'm also speaking with Mexico tomorrow morning, and I don't expect anything very dramatic. We put tariffs on. They owe us a lot of money, and I'm sure they're going to pay. They have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. Fentanyl has killed this year at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
Mr. President,